The ship came out of faster-than-light travel with a soft hum. Admiral Kang Taeho stood on the bridge of the Taeguk and looked at the stars ahead. After 50 years of work, humanity had finally reached the edge of known space. They were not alone in the universe. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Park Yuna from her station. She was young, but her eyes were sharp. She had graduated top of her class in tactical studies. "It is coming from a station about 2 light minutes away." Kang nodded slowly. He was 58 years old. His hair was gray, and his face carried the weight of many years in service. But his mind was still quick. "Put it on screen." The message was simple. It welcomed them to conquered space and asked them to wait for a diplomatic ship. The language had been translated by their computers. The conquered, it seemed, had been watching humanity for some time. 3 hours later, a golden vessel arrived. It was beautiful in a way human ships were not. Smooth lines, no visible weapons. It looked like art, not war. Ambassador Vel came aboard with 4 guards. The Marathi were tall beings with silver skin and 3 eyes. They moved like they owned the universe, and perhaps, Kang thought, they believed they did. "Welcome to the galactic community," Vel said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "We are the Galactic Conquered. 3,000 species, 12,000 years of peace. You are newcomers. We must assess your civilization." Kang bowed his head slightly. "We are honored. Earth hopes for friendship and trade." Vel smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Of course. First, we must see your technology, your weapons. Standard procedure." Park Yuna watched from the corner of the bridge. She did not trust this alien. His words were polite, but his tone was not. The assessment took 2 days. Conquered scientists scanned everything. They looked at human engines with mild interest. They studied human medicine and found it acceptable. They examined human art and literature and called it developing. Then they reached the weapons. The lead scientist, a small creature named Tosk, stared at the data for a long time. Then he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "Admiral," Tosk said, "your weapons are kinetic." Kang nodded. "Yes, railguns, missiles. We use physical projectiles accelerated to high speeds." Tosk laughed again. He showed the data to Vel. Soon all the aliens were laughing. "You throw rocks," Vel said. He was trying to control his amusement, but failing. "Sophisticated rocks, yes, but rocks. Every species in the Conquered abandoned kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. Energy weapons are superior in every way. They can be aimed instantly. They travel at light speed. They can be tuned to different frequencies." Park Yuna stepped forward. Her face was calm, but her hands were tight fists at her sides. "Our railguns fire tungsten slugs at very high velocities. The kinetic energy alone can destroy most targets." Vel waved his hand like he was brushing away a fly. "And our shields can absorb energy, deflect it, redirect it. Your little metal pieces would bounce off like rain on glass." "With respect," Yuna said, "kinetic energy does not work like that. It cannot be deflected the same way." But Vel was not listening. He was already writing his report on a small device. "Humans, pre-energy civilization, weapons, obsolete, threat level, none. Recommend classification as level 2 species." Kong watched all of this with a quiet face. Inside, he felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not anger. It was patience. He had learned long ago that the best response to mockery was silence and time. 1 week later, they stood before the Galactic Senate. It was a massive chamber filled with thousands of species. Some flew, some crawled. Some existed as clouds of gas in special containers. All of them looked at the human delegation with curiosity or amusement. Senator Wren, an old creature with gray scales and tired eyes, raised a question. "We know little about this species. Perhaps we should study them more before classification." They chose kinetic weapons when energy weapons are available. That is unusual. We should ask why. Vel responded quickly. Because they are primitive. They have not yet discovered the superiority of energy-based systems. They will learn, in time. For now, they are harmless. The Senate voted. The result was almost unanimous. Humanity was classified as Level 2, a harmless, developing species not worth monitoring. They were given a small section of space that the Concord considered useless. Rocky planets. Few resources. A corner of the galaxy where no one important wanted to go. "Thank you for your generosity," Admiral Kang said, and his voice betrayed nothing. As they left the Senate chamber, Park Yuna walked beside him. Her jaw was tight. "They laughed at us, sir. They think we are nothing." Kang kept walking. His steps were slow and steady. "Yes, they do." "Does that not anger you?" The Admiral stopped. He looked at the young lieutenant. His eyes were calm like deep water. "Anger is a fire that burns fast and dies. Patience is a river that cuts through stone." He paused. "They gave us something valuable today, Lieutenant." "What is that, sir?" "They gave us time," Kang said. "And they gave us the greatest gift any enemy can give. They underestimated us. They will not watch. They will not prepare. And one day when they need us, they will remember this moment." He started walking again. "Let them laugh. We have work to do." Park Yuna followed, and she carried the memory of alien laughter in her heart. She would not forget. None of them would. In the Senate chamber behind them, Senator Wren sat alone. He stared at the door where the humans had left. Something bothered him, a feeling he could not name. "Kinetic weapons," he muttered to himself. "Why would anyone choose kinetic weapons?" No one heard him. No one cared. The warning died in an empty room. 10 years passed. The galaxy forgot about humanity. The Concord had bigger concerns: trade disputes, border conflicts, political games between old species. Humans were a joke, told at parties. A funny story about the primitive species that threw rocks. But in that forgotten corner of space, humanity was not sleeping. Dr. O. Minho stood in his laboratory on the research station Hanul. The station floated in the darkness between stars, far from any eyes. He was 42 years old, thin, with glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. He had spent 15 years of his life on one project. Today, it was finished. "Run the final test," he said to his assistant, a young woman named Shin Bora. The railgun prototype sat in a vacuum chamber. It was not beautiful like Concord technology. It was ugly, brutal, and covered in thick cables. But beauty was not its purpose. The weapon fired. A tungsten slug the size of a man's fist flew down the testing tunnel. The computers tracked its speed. When the number appeared on the screen, Bora gasped. 8% of light speed, she whispered. "Dr. O, that is faster than anything we have ever built." Minho nodded. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "At this velocity, a 20-kilogram slug carries more energy than most Concord capital ship weapons. And it is not energy, it is mass, it is momentum. You cannot deflect momentum. You can only try to survive it." He looked at the weapon with something like love. "The Mark 7 railgun. This is what will change everything." Far across human space, Captain Baek Soo-jin commanded a ship that did not officially exist. The Silent Wind was a stealth frigate, painted black, running cold, invisible to every scanner the Concord had ever built. She led a squadron of 12 such ships. Her mission was simple: watch, learn, and never be seen. Soo-jin was 40 years old with short black hair and a scar on her left cheek from an accident in her youth. She spoke rarely but saw everything. Her crew feared and loved her in equal measure. "Captain, we are approaching the Concord Border Patrol route," her navigator reported. "Cut all emissions. Drift only." The ship went dark. No engines. No heat, no signals. They floated like a piece of space debris while a Concorde patrol ship passed within 5,000 kilometers. The alien ship's sensors swept over them and found nothing. After the patrol was gone, Su-Jin allowed herself a small smile. They cannot see us. Their technology is powerful, but it looks for the wrong things. They look for energy. We give them nothing. Her first officer, Commander Lee Jin-woo, stood beside her. How long do we keep doing this, Captain? Watching but never acting? Until we are ready, she said. Until we have enough ships. Until our weapons are perfect. Until the day comes when watching is no longer enough. Jin-woo nodded. He trusted his captain. Everyone did. Back on Earth, Admiral Kang Tae-ho had grown older but not weaker. He sat in the War Council chamber with the leaders of humanity's military. On the table before them were reports, numbers, and plans. 200 stealth frigates, General Shin Dae-young read from the report. 40 destroyers, 12 dreadnoughts, all armed with Mark 7 railguns and advanced missile systems, all invisible to Concorde sensors. Kang nodded slowly. Good. But it is not enough to build weapons. We must build doctrine, strategy. We must learn how they fight so we know how to beat them. Park Yuna was there too. She was no longer a lieutenant. Now she held the rank of commander and led the tactical division. 10 years had hardened her. The memory of alien laughter still burned in her mind. The Concorde fights with energy weapons, she said, pulling up holographic displays. Their battles are about shields and power management. They fire energy lances. The enemy absorbs or deflects. They fire back. It goes on until one side runs out of power. Battles last for days sometimes. She changed the display. It showed a human railgun slug hitting a simulated Concorde shield. The shield flared bright, tried to absorb the impact, and then failed. The slug punched through and kept going. Kinetic weapons do not care about shields designed to stop energy. A 20-kilogram slug at 8% light speed does not bounce. It does not deflect. It goes through. And everything behind it dies. Kang studied the simulation. They have never faced anything like this. They have forgotten that kinetic weapons exist. They build shields to stop what they expect. They do not expect us. No, sir, Yuna said. They do not even think about us. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Concorde, life continued as it had for thousands of years. Director Cora ran the intelligence division. She was efficient, experienced, and absolutely certain of conquered superiority. On her desk sat 14 reports from the past decade. All of them mentioned human military activity. All of them noted the construction of new ships. All of them were ignored. More rock throwers, she said to her assistant, tossing the latest report aside. Let them play with their toys. They are level 2. Harmless. We have real threats to worry about. Her assistant hesitated. Director, one of our observers noted that human ships are unusually difficult to detect. Perhaps we should investigate. Cora laughed. Difficult to detect? They probably just have poor technology. Our sensors are the best in the galaxy. If their ships were a real threat, we would know. She waved her hand. File the report. Forget about it. The report was filed. Forgotten. Like all the others. In the Senate, old Senator Wren tried one last time. He was very old now. His scales faded to almost white. He stood before his fellow senators and begged them to listen. We do not understand humans, he said. They chose kinetic weapons. Every other species abandoned kinetics thousands of years ago. Why did they choose differently? What do they know that we do not? The Senate murmured with impatience. Vell, now a senior ambassador, stood up. Senator Wren, you worry too much. Humans are primitive. Their choice of weapons proves it. They will learn eventually. Until then, they are not our concern. The vote was called. Senator Wren's proposal to increase observation of humanity was rejected. The old senator sat down heavily. He knew somehow that he had failed, that his warning would be remembered only after it was too late. He retired that same year. The galaxy moved on. In the darkness between stars, the silent wind drifted. Captain Bayek Su-jin stood at her window and looked out at the distant lights of Concord space. Somewhere out there, aliens laughed and celebrated and forgot that humanity existed. "One day," she whispered to no one, "one day they will remember us." Behind her, invisible in the void, 199 other ships waited in silence. The clock was ticking. The galaxy did not hear it. The Drath hegemony came without warning. They poured out of the dark regions beyond conquered space like a flood of iron and fire. 10,000 warships, 1,000,000 soldiers, a hunger for conquest that had been building for centuries. The first Concord world fell in 6 hours. The second lasted 2 days. The third did not last at all. On the Concord homeworld, the Senate gathered in emergency session. The great chamber, usually filled with calm debate, was now full of fear. Species that had known only peace for generations now faced something they had forgotten existed: total war. "Their shields adapt," Admiral Tan of the Concord Defense Fleet reported. His voice shook. "Our energy weapons hit them and they adjust. After the third volley, our weapons do nothing. Nothing." Ambassador Vell sat in his seat, pale and silent. The arrogance that had marked him for years was gone. In its place was the hollow look of a being watching his world end. "How many ships do we have?" someone asked. 2,000 combat ready. "But against 10,000? Tan did not finish. He did not need to. In the back of the chamber, a junior aide worked at a console. Following protocol, he sent requests for aid to every species in the Concord, including humanity. No one expected a response. Humans were level 2, primitive, useless. On Earth, the message arrived at midnight. Admiral Kang Tae-ho read it in his office. He was 68 now, his hair completely white, his body slower than before. But his mind was a weapon that had never dulled. He called an emergency meeting. The War Council gathered within the hour. General Shin Dae-young was the first to speak. He was a hard man with a hard voice. "They laughed at us. They put us in a corner of space they considered garbage. Why should we bleed for them?" Murmurs of agreement filled the room. The memory of that day in the Senate still burned. Every human in that room remembered the laughter. Commander Park Yuna stood. She was 42 now, her face lined with years of work, her eyes still sharp as blades. "General, I understand your feelings. I share them. But think about what happens if we do nothing." She pulled up a star map. It showed conquered space, then human space, then the advancing Drath fleet. "If the hegemony defeats the conquered, they do not stop. They will come for us next. And they will come with 10,000 ships, fresh from victory, knowing exactly how weak the galaxy is." She paused. "We can fight them now, alongside the conquered, while the hegemony is still stretched thin. Or we can fight them alone later, after they have grown even stronger." Silence. "There is another reason," she continued. "Right now, the galaxy thinks we are nothing. Rock throwers, primitives. If we go to war and we win, that changes forever. No one will ever laugh at humanity again. No one will ever underestimate us. No one will ever think they can ignore us." Kang had been silent through the debate. Now he spoke, and everyone listened. "We did not build our fleet for revenge. We built it for survival. And survival sometimes means fighting battles you did not choose." He stood slowly, like a mountain rising. "We go. But we go on our terms. We show them what human weapons can do. And when this is over, the galaxy will remember." The vote passed. Earth would send its third fleet, 50 ships, under the command of Commodore Hanjia. Hanjia was 50 years old. with iron gray hair cut short and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. She had never lost a battle in simulation. She had never shown fear in her life. Her crew called her the Cold Star when they thought she could not hear. She read her orders carefully. Directive Omega was authorized. Full kinetic bombardment, if necessary. No restrictions. "Understood," she said, and closed the file. The Third Fleet departed Earth orbit at dawn, 50 ships in perfect formation, frigates, destroyers, and the dreadnought Guanguito at the center. They jumped to faster-than-light travel and vanished into the void. The Concorde received word that human reinforcements were coming. In the Senate, the reaction was mixed. 50 ships, Vell said. His voice was tired. They send 50 ships against 10,000. It is a gesture. Nothing more. Director Cora, her confidence shattered by the invasion, shook her head. Any help is welcome, even theirs. Senator Wren was not there. He had died 2 years earlier, his warnings never heard, but somewhere, perhaps, his spirit watched. In the conquered defense fleet, Admiral Tan prepared for the final battle. The hegemony was advancing on Vareth Prime, the agricultural heart of the Concorde. If it fell, billions would starve. The war would effectively be over. "We have 2,000 ships," Tan told his officers. "The enemy has 4,000 in this sector alone. Our energy weapons are nearly useless against their adaptive shields. We will fight. We will probably die. But we will not surrender." His officers nodded. They were afraid, but they were not cowards. Then the human fleet arrived. Tan watched them on his sensors, 50 small signatures appearing at the edge of the system. He felt a brief moment of hope, then reality crushed it. 50 ships, he muttered. It is not enough. Nothing is enough. He opened communications. "Human vessels. This is Admiral Tan. Thank you for coming. Please join our formation. We will coordinate our attack." The response came from Commodore Han Jia. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "Negative, Admiral. We will operate independently. Stay out of our way." Tan blinked. "Commodore, you must coordinate with us. You have 50 ships. The enemy has thousands. You cannot—" "Admiral?" Han Jia's voice did not change. "With respect, you have been fighting this war for weeks and losing. We have not. Let us show you how humans fight." She cut the channel. Commander Park Yuna, aboard the destroyer, Chung Mu, watched the exchange from the tactical center. She smiled, thin and cold. "All ships," Commodore Han Jia announced on the fleet channel. "Whisper protocol. Go dark. Prepare for combat." One by one, the 50 human ships vanished from sensors. Their engines went silent. Their emissions dropped to 0. They became ghosts in the void. The Concorde fleet watched in confusion. On their screens, the human ships simply disappeared. "Where did they go?" Admiral Tan demanded. "Find them!" But there was nothing to find. The humans were there, invisible, waiting. 4,000 Drath warships advanced on Vareth Prime. They did not know that death was already among them. In the darkness, Commodore Han Jia counted down the seconds. Her finger rested near the firing command. Around her, thousands of railguns charged in silence. "For every laugh," she whispered, "for every insult, for every time they called us primitive." The clock struck 0. "All ships, fire!" The first volley was invisible. 20 tungsten slugs, each weighing 20 kilograms, crossed 40,000 kilometers of space in less than 2 seconds. They made no sound. They gave no warning. They simply arrived. The Drath flagship, Conqueror's Wrath, was the largest ship in their fleet. 2 kilometers long, 1,000,000 tons of armor and weapons. It had destroyed 100 Concorde ships in the past month. Its commander, Admiral Tarn of the Hegemony, stood on his bridge with complete confidence. Then 3 slugs hit his ship. The first punched through the forward shields like they were not there. Energy shields were designed to absorb and redirect energy. They were not designed for this. The slug carried pure kinetic force, mass multiplied by velocity squared. The shield flickered, failed, and died. The slug continued. It tore through the outer hull, through 3 interior decks, through the main reactor housing, and out the other side of the ship. By the time it exited, it had created a tunnel of fire and vacuum through the heart of the vessel. The second and third slugs hit within milliseconds of the first. The Conqueror's wrath broke apart. Admiral Tarn did not even have time to scream. One moment he existed, the next he was scattered atoms mixing with the debris of his command. Across the Drath fleet, 17 other ships died in that first second. Destroyers, cruisers, a carrier. All of them vanishing in bright flashes of destruction. On the Concorde flagship, Admiral Tan stared at his screens. His mouth hung open. He could not understand what he was seeing. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Where is that fire coming from?" His sensor officer shook his head. "Sir, I cannot locate the source. There are no energy signatures, no weapons fire. The Drath ships are just exploding." But they were not exploding. They were being destroyed by weapons the Conquered had forgotten could exist. The human fleet moved like ghosts. They fired, then repositioned in complete silence. By the time Drath sensors detected where the attack came from, the human ships were already gone, charging their railguns for the next volley. Commodore Hanjia stood on the bridge of the Guangeto, watching data flow across her screens. Her face showed nothing. Her voice was calm. "Target the carriers next. Without carriers, they cannot launch fighters. Without fighters, they cannot find us." The orders went out. The railguns spoke again. Drath carriers were massive ships designed to hold thousands of smaller attack craft. Their hangars were their weakness, huge open spaces with only thin armor. The tungsten slugs found those weak points with terrible precision. One carrier took a slug through its main hangar. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The hangar became a furnace. 2,000 Drath fighters died before they could launch. Another carrier tried to turn, to present a smaller target. It was too slow. 2 slugs caught it in the engines. The ship spun out of control, crashing into a destroyer beside it. Both vessels died together. In 30 minutes, the Drath had lost their command ship, 4 carriers, and 200 other vessels. They had not destroyed a single human ship. They had not even seen a single human ship. Admiral Tarn's replacement, Commander Vex, shouted orders into his communicator. "Find them! Use everything! Sensors, probes, fighters! Find the human vessels and destroy them!" Thousands of Drath fighters launched. They spread across the battlefield, searching for any sign of the invisible enemy. Some found debris, some found nothing, a few found death. Captain Yoon Ara commanded the destroyer Chungmu. She was 35 years old, small but fierce, with a reputation for taking risks that somehow always worked. Her ship was one of the smallest in the fleet, but her crew was the best. "Captain, Drath fighters approaching. They will pass within 10 kilometers, her sensor officer reported. Yoon Ara considered. They could stay silent, let the fighters pass, or they could eliminate the threat. "Railguns," she decided. "Point defense pattern. Fire when they enter range." The Chungmu revealed itself for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, it fired 40 small railgun rounds. Each round was only a kilogram, but at their velocity, each one hit like a bomb. 12 Drath fighters became clouds of expanding metal. The Chungmu went dark again and slipped away before the others could respond. The battle continued for hours. The Drath tried everything. They spread their fleet thin, hoping to catch humans by surrounding them. The humans simply picked off isolated ships. They concentrated their fleet, massing firepower. The humans targeted the center and broke through. They launched missiles, thousands of them. Human point defense railguns shot them down like insects. By the 4th hour, The Drath had lost 800 ships. The humans had lost 2. Commander Park Yuna, now serving as tactical coordinator aboard the dreadnought Guangeto, watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Every flash of destruction on her screen was payment for 10 years of insults. "Commodore," she reported, "enemy fleet is showing signs of confusion. Their formation is breaking down." Han Jia nodded. "Increase pressure. All ships, advance and fire at will." The human fleet became visible now, emerging from the darkness like wolves from the trees. 50 ships against nearly 3,000 remaining Drath. It should have been suicide. Instead, it was slaughter. The Drath flagship, the third one after the first 2 had been destroyed, tried to retreat. A volley from the Guangaito caught it amidships. The ship folded in half and died. Then the Chungmu was hit. A lucky shot from a Drath cruiser. An energy lance that should have been absorbed by shields, but the Chungmu had lowered shields to fire. The beam cut through engineering, killing half the crew instantly. Captain Yun Ara felt her ship dying around her. Alarms screamed, fires burned. Her helm officer was dead. Her weapons officer was dead. But she was still alive, and her ship still had power. "All hands abandon ship," she ordered. Then she countermanded herself. "Belay that. Helm, set collision course for the enemy carrier. Engineering, give me everything the engines have left." Her surviving crew stared at her. She met their eyes. "That carrier has 40,000 troops waiting to land on Vareth Prime. If we ram it, those troops die. If we do not, millions of civilians die instead." She paused. "I am not ordering you to stay, but I am staying." No one left. Her crew strapped in and prepared to die. The Chungmu accelerated. The Drath carrier saw it coming and tried to turn. Too slow. Far too slow. At the last second, Yun Ara fired every remaining railgun slug at point-blank range. The slugs hit the carrier's reactor housing. Then the Chungmu hit the carrier itself. The explosion was visible across the battlefield. 2 ships becoming one fireball, then nothing but scattered light. Commodore Han Jia watched the Chungmu's signal vanish from her board. For a moment, her mask cracked. A single tear ran down her cheek. Then her face hardened again. "All ships," she said. "Make their sacrifice mean something. Finish this." The human fleet surged forward. The Drath, broken and bleeding, began to run. What had been 4,000 ships was now less than 2,000. They fled toward the edge of the system, leaving their dead behind. At dawn, Galactic Standard Time, Commodore Han Jia opened communications for the first time since the battle began. "This is the Earth vessel, Guangeto, to all conquered forces. Hegemony fleet is in full retreat. Vareth Prime is secure." She paused. "You are welcome." Admiral Tan sat in his command chair, staring at the impossible numbers on his screen. 1,400 Drath ships destroyed, 8 human ships lost, a kill ratio that should not exist. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" No one answered. But everyone knew. The primitives, the rock throwers, the species the galaxy had laughed at and forgotten. They had just changed everything. The war ended 3 months after the Battle of Vareth Prime. The Drath hegemony, having lost 60% of their fleet to human kinetic weapons, surrendered unconditionally. Their leaders were captured. Their territory was divided. Their threat was finished. But the real change was not about the Drath. It was about humanity. The Galactic Senate called an emergency session. The Great Chamber, which had laughed at humans 10 years earlier, was now silent with a different kind of attention. 3,000 species waited as the human delegation entered. Admiral Kang Tae-ho walked slowly to the central podium. He was 70 now, leaning on a cane, his body finally showing its age. But his eyes were clear, and his voice was strong. Behind him stood Commodore Han Jia, Commander Park Yuna, and Dr. Oh Minho, the scientist who had created the weapons that changed everything. They represented the best of humanity, the patient, the fierce, the brilliant. Ambassador Vel rose from his seat. He looked older too, but the change in him was deeper than years. The arrogance was gone from his eyes. In its place was something that might have been shame. "Admiral Kang," Vel said, "on behalf of the Galactic Concord, I offer our deepest gratitude. Your fleet saved billions of lives. Without your intervention, Verath Prime would have fallen. The war would have been lost." Kang nodded once. "We came because it was necessary, not for gratitude." Vel continued, his voice heavy. "I must also offer something else. An apology." He paused, struggling with words he had never expected to say. 10 years ago, I stood in this chamber and laughed at your weapons. I called you primitive. I recommended that you be classified as harmless. I was wrong, the Senate murmured. This was unprecedented, a senior ambassador admitting error before the entire galaxy. "I must ask you a question," Vel said. "One that has haunted me since the battle. Why? Why did you choose kinetic weapons when every other species chose energy? We assumed you were simply behind us in development, but that is clearly not true. So why?" Kang looked at Vel for a long moment. Then he smiled, thin and knowing. "You assumed energy weapons were superior because everyone used them," he said. 3,000 species all making the same choice. You thought this meant the choice was correct. You never considered that it might simply mean everyone made the same mistake." He tapped his cane on the floor, the sound echoing in the silent chamber. "Your shields are designed to stop energy. They absorb it, deflect it, redirect it. Very effective against what you expect to face. But kinetic energy is different. Mass times velocity. You cannot redirect momentum. You can only try to absorb it. And at 8% of light speed, there is too much energy to absorb. The math does not allow it." Dr. O'Minho stepped forward to support the Admiral's words. "A 20-kilogram tungsten slug at 8% light speed carries approximately 500 terajoules of energy. That is equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, and unlike energy weapons, it does not disperse. It does not spread. It concentrates all that force into a single point." He adjusted his glasses, nervous before so many alien eyes. "Your shields fail because they were never designed for this. And you never designed for this because you forgot kinetic weapons existed. You assumed the past was primitive. You stopped innovating in that direction. We did not." Commander Park Yuna spoke next. Her voice was hard and clear. "Every species in this chamber evolved in roughly the same way. You discovered energy. You built energy weapons. You built energy shields. And then you stopped. You declared victory and moved on. But humans never stopped." She looked around the Senate, meeting alien eyes without flinching. "Our history is different from yours. We did not have 12,000 years of peace. We had war, constant war. We fought each other with rocks, then spears, then swords, then guns, then bombs. We never stopped looking for better ways to kill. It is not something we are proud of, but it is who we are." She paused. "You laughed because we threw rocks. You forgot that throwing rocks is how we survived, how we became the dominant species on our world, how we built everything we have. You assumed we were primitive, but we were not primitive. We were experienced." Admiral Kang spoke again. "You gave us 10 years to prepare. 10 years where no one watched us, no one studied us, no one considered us a threat. You gave us time, and you gave us ignorance. The two most valuable gifts an enemy can give." The Senate was completely silent now. Every being in that chamber understood what they were hearing. They had not just underestimated humanity. They had created the conditions for their own defeat. Senator Vel lowered his head. "What would you have us do now, Admiral?" Kang considered. "Learn. That is all. Learn that the past is not always inferior to the present. Learn that different choices are not always wrong choices. Learn that the species you dismiss might be the one that saves you. He paused. And remember Captain Yoon Ara, who gave her life to protect a world that had laughed at her people. Remember the 2,400 humans who died so that your civilization could survive. Remember that we came when you called, even though you gave us every reason not to. The Senate voted that day. Humanity was reclassified from Level 2 to Level 7, equal to the oldest and most advanced species in the Conquered. They were offered a permanent seat on the High Council. They were given territory, resources, and respect. But more than that, they were given something that could not be measured. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. In the weeks that followed, Concord scientists studied human weapons with desperate intensity. Kinetic doctrine spread across the galaxy. Within a year, every major fleet was developing railgun technology. Within 5 years, the old energy-only approach was considered dangerously obsolete. Commander Park Yuna, now Captain Park, stood on the bridge of her own dreadnought, the Yoon Ara, named in honor of the hero of Vareth Prime. She watched through the viewport as conquered ships practiced with their new kinetic weapons. Her tactical officer, a young lieutenant named Kim Hana, stood beside her. "Captain, do you think they will ever underestimate us again?" Park considered the question. She thought about the laughter in the Senate 10 years ago. She thought about the silence in that same Senate 3 months ago. She thought about the fear she had seen in alien eyes when they watched human ships fight. "No," she said finally. "They will never underestimate us again. They will never forget what we can do. And that is the point. Not revenge, not pride, safety. When no one thinks they can beat you, fewer of them try." She turned away from the window. "But we must never become what they were. We must never assume we have all the answers. We must never stop learning, never stop improving, never stop asking why others choose differently." Kim Hana nodded. "Because the next species might be the one that surprises us." "Exactly." Park allowed herself a small smile. "The galaxy learned a lesson from humanity. We should make sure we learned it too." On the Concord homeworld, they built a memorial. It stood in the plaza outside the Senate, where all species could see it. At the center was a simple tungsten sphere, a railgun slug, mounted on a pedestal of black stone. Below it, they carved Senator Wren's words, the warning no one had heard. "We have never encountered a species that chose kinetics. Perhaps we should ask why they chose differently." And below that, humanity's answer. "Never ignore a warning. Never dismiss what you do not understand. And never underestimate the species that learned to throw rocks and never stopped improving them." Admiral Kang Tae-ho visited the memorial once, near the end of his life. He stood before it for a long time, remembering the young officer he had been, the insults he had endured, the patience he had practiced. "We did it," he said quietly. "We showed them." The galaxy turned around him, vast and ancient, and finally paying attention. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, a new human fleet patrolled in silence, watching, waiting, ready. They would always be ready. That was the human way.